Boundless Spirit, pushing the limits of talk radio with Charlene Springer.
Welcome to Boundless Spirit Radio with Charlene Springer. And as usual, we have a really awesome guest for you today. We have Maxine Taylor here, and I'm so excited for you to meet her. She is a little rebel. That was the one thing I did notice about her. But she's also a revolutionary, and it's just going to be incredible to get to know her and get to play with some of her talents. So, welcome, Maxine.
Thank you so much, Charlene. It's great to be with you.
Great. So great to have you on. For those of you who don't know Maxine, and you find her on YouTube, she is awesome. Wait till you get into all of her reports on YouTube. But she is what you would call a true visionary. She's been in this business for over 45 years, and that is the business of spiritual work. She's an internationally known astrologer, energy healer, spiritual coach, teacher, speaker, and published author. So, Maxine, where do we start with you? Because you have done so much in such a short period of time. First of all, tell us how you got into this, because first you were actually known for your astrology. How did you even get into that?
Oh, that's a great question. In 1966, when I moved from Miami to Atlanta, I was on a houseboat in the middle of Lake Lanier, and I met this older lady, and now I was just a child at the time. I was like 23. And she told me all about myself just based on my sun sign. And it blew me away because prior to that moment, I had been, as many young people are, I knew everything. And I was a skeptic, and she totally turned me around in the middle of Lake Lanier. And I bought one of those little books that you get in the checkout stand in the grocery store that lists gave you a forecast for every day of the year. And it said in there, on the 18th of the month, all of your financial problems will be solved. Well, I was a school teacher, and I moved to Atlanta. I didn't have a teaching job yet, and it was hand-to-mouth feeding. And on the 18th of the month, I got my $800 retirement check from Dade County, Florida. In 1966, $800 was like $8,000. So I instantly became a convert, and the minute I started sending away for astrology books, and this is pre-internet, obviously, I knew that I wanted to be an astrologer. So I went from being a skeptic to being an advocate, and there's just nothing worse than a convert. So I was all over the place. Astrology was illegal all over the United States back then. It was considered fortune-telling. And here in Atlanta, I went to Cobb County. They had a fortune-telling license. It cost $1,500 a year for a fortune-telling license, which was not only insulting but egregious. And so I decided, after I had studied astrology for a few months, that I was going to legalize astrology. Now, at the time, to legalize astrology in the middle of the Bible Belt was asking for trouble. And so I was studying with a group of older ladies, and I said, I hope it's okay if I legalize astrology. And they'd been laying low, like so many astrology students had for so many years, because they were concerned about the church and government and all of that. And here I was saying, we've got to get it off the books. It's fortune telling. So I asked they said, okay. And I asked for a hearing with with the chairman of the Cobb County Commissioners. I told him I wanted to legalize astrology. He said, we're meeting Tuesday evening. I said, I'll be there. And long story short, I made my case, and they took astrology off the books as fortune telling. And said they would charge $100 a year for an astrology license. And it was November, and so they charged me $10, and I left floating on air with Georgia's first astrology license. So my tagline is, I'm Georgia's first licensed astrologer. So then the women I studied with, said, but wait a minute. This doesn't protect the public from the unqualified practitioner who claims to know what they're doing, which is what we have now on the internet, because anybody can claim to be anything. So I spearheaded the movement to establish the Atlanta Board of Astrology Examiners, which tests and licenses people in the city of Atlanta. Actually, they test it, and the city issues the license, and that opened the door for other people to do this. And with the advent of the internet, fast forward to the internet, everybody can claim to be an astrologer. There are no credentials. And I always used to tell people, check out the person you're going to go get a reading from. Make sure they feel right to you. If you resonate with them, they'll read you well. If you don't resonate with them, find somebody who does. So nowadays, you don't need a license to practice astrology. They didn't want strange people coming to your door, disturbing the neighbors. Well, my neighbors are not disturbed at all. They're not here during the day they work. And I have a wonderful group of neighbors, and so it's never been a problem. But now my clientele is all over the world, so I do it on the internet, and so I don't need a license after all.
But still, it came a long way. I mean, you go from not having anything to you, as I said, being that rebel, decided this is how we're going to do it. So then you took it to the next level. Where did you go from there with astrology?
Well, everywhere. When you're the first, you get a great deal of publicity. And I learned more than my clients did about life. I was interviewed on, all the networks, and I was actually CNN's on-air astrologer when they began broadcasting in 1980. I think it was 80 or 81. And it was live TV. And I've never shied away from live TV or radio because I love it. And so I was giving political forecasts on the air, which is a joke because at the time I was I'm still non-political or apolitical, but I never read the paper back then or listened to the news because it was negative. So the predictions I made were not based on anything I'd read in a mundane sense, but only on astrology. Well, I got a great deal of publicity, needless to say, by being on CNN. Subsequently, I was on the Larry King show. That was like the top of the heap back then, and he was charming. And I wrote a book. My first book was written in that time in 1973. It's called Now That I've Cast It, What Do I Do with It? Because before computer astrology came into play, computer programs for astrology, we had to cast the chart by hand, and we had to use logarithms and algebra, and those are subjects I did not do well in school, but I did it because I had to cast a chart. And so there was a lot of information that needed to be disseminated, and so more and more astrologers emerged. I was one of the founders of the Atlanta Astrological Society, which is now the Metropolitan Atlanta Astrological Society. I'm on the board of directors of the American Federation of Astrologers. It's the largest and oldest astrological organization in the country. The AFA publishes astrology books, which is terrific. They published my books. So I've done a lot. I've been in astrology for 51 years, and you get a lot of publicity, you meet a lot of people, you do a lot of charts. I've predicted the outcome of many elections for politicians. And what I found out, those of you who study astrology out there, if you're doing a forecast on two politicians or three or four in a race, you cannot tell a politician he or she is going to lose. They will not speak with you after that. So my suggestion is don't do it. Just tell the one that's going to win, because it's very difficult when you put so much money and emotion into a campaign to be told by somebody, listen, pull out now, cut your losses, you're going to lose.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had to do that in a couple of cases. It only took one, though, to convince me never to do that again.
Hmm. I'm sure you were pulled a lot when we had that last election with Hillary and Trump.
Oh my word! Oh my word! On my YouTube channel, you've got. Well, actually, you know what, Charlene? You can look back at my YouTube channel, Maxine Taylor Astrologer, and I have charts on when we had 13 candidates.
Mm-hmm.
I only had birth times for a couple of them. To do an accurate chart, you have to have the exact minute of birth. Trump's birth time is accurate, just as President Obama's birth time is accurate. He was not born in Kenya. He was born in Hawaii, no matter what anyone says. And it's because I've worked on the charts, both charts, diligently. And of course, relatively recently, in the past year or so, during the campaign, I think Trump finally acknowledged that the birth time for President Obama was
the birthplace,
that he was born. Yeah, he was born in Hawaii. Well, astrologers have known that all along. The other chart just didn't work. So yes, I got involved in predicting who was going to stay in the race and who was going to leave, based on a solar chart, meaning we didn't have their exact birth time. So I did the best I knew how, and how and why I first predicted that Trump would not be president, and then how and why I recanted and said, oh my goodness, is he ever? And of course I was a little more tactful than that. But I saw it. Would you like me to tell you in layman's terms?
Yeah.
I do what's called a diurnal chart. This is a special chart that tells what really goes on a particular day. I don't know a lot of astrologers who do the diurnal chart, number one. Number two, I know even fewer who do it the way I do, the way I was taught to do it. And it's dependent on an accurate birth time. Well, on the day of the inauguration, because that's how, we didn't have an accurate birth time for Hillary. And we do have one for Bernie, and we do have one for Trump. So I went straight to the inauguration chart. Now, the chart has to be relocated to Washington, D.C. from wherever the candidate was born. So you have to have the exact place and the exact minute. When I looked at Trump's diurnal chart for the day of the inauguration, I said, no. I think it's the inauguration. It's either the election or the inauguration. I've got the chart here, but it's on my YouTube channel. I said, no, there's no way he can win because he doesn't have the traditional victory chart. When I did President Obama's diurnal for his re-election, the angles of the chart, and this is technical term, but the cusps or the edges of the first house, fourth house, seventh house, and 10th house were all triggered by the nodes of the moon, which are very, very karmic. And I knew his birth time was accurate. And I said, oh, Obama's going to be reelected, of course. Well, when I looked at Trump's chart, there was only Mars on the ascendant. And that is a very me chart. And I said, no, this is not the chart of somebody who's president of our great nation. And so even though Hillary's chart didn't show the traditional victory, which indicated her birth time was off, I knew then that it was Hillary. Well, as time went by and I watched Trump, I realized, oh my goodness, he is a me kind of guy. Forgetting all the times that I would watch The Celebrity Apprentice and think, good grief, he really likes firing people, and he likes being king. And so I recanted and said, guess what? This is our president, essentially.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was a shock to me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, it was a shock to a lot of people, but as an astrologer, it was a shock to me. So anyhow, that's the story.
And just recently, you actually did another YouTube video about what's happening with him in the case and impeachment eventually too, right?
Oh my goodness! Well, we better talk about that. Now that's let's see, when did I do that? Today, it was, I think, Monday, the 5th of June is when I did it. And astrologically, I've given all kinds of details, and since this is a radio show, I hesitate to give technical details because I can't point to it and show it. However, what I can say is there is a point in Trump's chart which is very vulnerable, and that is the area of his 4th house of home, family, and real estate. For those of you who study astrology, he has the moon and south node there. Saturn, the planet of reality and responsibility, is sitting there now. The full moon that's going to take place on Friday, which is the day after Comey testifies before Congress, is on the south node, the moon south node. And so it is activated. This is an area that is not one of success. It's traditionally, the south node is traditionally the area of loss. Now, Comey has Saturn sitting on his sun. When Saturn sits on the sun, a lot of people say that's restrictive. I don't think it's restrictive. I think it's when you take your responsibility and respond to your ability. So this strengthens him. And the full moon on Friday, really, it sits on his sun. And so he is absolutely center stage empowered. And that's it, very simply, in a nutshell. The results of this meeting with Congress, testimonial, have yet to be known because it's going to drag on while Congress looks at all the testimony. There are 2 eclipses that are very, very important. Mm-hmm. There's one eclipse. Well, we're getting August eclipses, and the August eclipses, very, very powerful, very powerful. I've done the United States chart and Trump's chart, and I would suggest for those of you who are interested that you go to YouTube, Maxine Taylor Astrologer, because you need to see it visually.
Yeah.
But there is an August eclipse that is very significant in that it reinforces the Saturn on the south node moon. So let me just bottom line this. Mm-hmm. We're having 2 eclipses in August. There is an opportunity for Trump to leave office after those eclipses, but usually we feel the impact of the eclipses is strongest 3 to 4 months after they occur, which is November and December. So there are 2 opportunities, one in August and one November and December. I haven't looked at 2018 because right now we're talking about the Russian collusion in our government, in our election, in the connection, the ties between Trump and Putin, between Trump and Russia. So I'm doing the immediate picture. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean he's going to be impeached, but he has an opportunity to leave office Now, he has said the job of president is harder than he thought it would be. He misses this old job. And I'm thinking, well, what did you think you were getting into? Um, it hadn't
He
stopped.
thought all he had to do was fire people.
Oh, yeah, you're fired. And he's done that. He did it with Comey, which is so interesting because now Comey is the guy that a lot of people are looking at to save the day. So he's coming in riding on a white horse in the eyes of some people. It's very, very interesting, the dynamic. And because of all of the quote unquote fake news and the insinuations that the news media is not being honest, it's very important to look at the astrology of politics so that we can actually see what's going on. In my opinion, I feel like the press is doing an incredible job. They're really hunkering down and making sure that they're holding people's feet to the fire. Which is good because that's their job. That's their job. They are the fourth estate. We count on them to keep our politicians honest. And so somebody complaining about that, well, be honest and you'll have nothing to complain about. Did I really say that? Yes, I did. Okay.
Wow. So now you've done you're doing the political thing. You're still doing the YouTube videos, and again, that is Maxine Taylor, astrologer on YouTube. And but you've written a few books, and your path has shifted somewhat. So it's not just astrology. You went a little bit deeper. So what are you doing now? Because you've studied some things, yeah.
Yeah, well, when I got into astrology, the floodgates opened, and I noticed I had, when I'd lay my hands on somebody, my whole body would shake. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And so even then, I started informally, doing healings. But what I found, it was after taking a couple of matrix energetic seminars, my healing modality, which I call star matrix, surfaced. And there was no denying that I was getting information that I had to share with people about their lives. Even though I thought it was crazy, I had enough proof from the first star matrix healing I did that I was to leave my left brain out of it and just shut up and pass along what spirit was telling me. And I have, and I've had, been the vehicle through which miracles have taken place. I very often am in tune with the other side and pick up on relatives on the other side. And I've connected the living with those on the other side from time to time. In fact, when I do my free full moon ceremony at the Phoenix and Dragon bookstore in Atlanta, I do it every month. Sometimes I'll pick up on the other side and I'll say, there's somebody here and this is what they look like and this is what they're saying. Do you know who they are? And, the person will say, yes, absolutely, I know who that is. And they're usually thunderstruck because you don't expect that.
Not in a group setting, yeah.
Not in a group setting. And so in my full moon ceremonies, I go around the circle. There are usually about 35 to 40 people there, although I've had more. And I read each person very quickly and come up with a beautiful mantra for them, which I then share with the entire group because our group is one. And what comes through for one person comes through for the other. So everybody is uplifted. It's a natural high. There's no charge for it. I've done it for, I can't even remember how many years I've done it. And it is just a joy for me to do it. I'm usually levitating by the time I leave. But you were asking about what I'm really doing now.
Right.
Okay. What I've seen through the astrology, through the horoscope, is that the moon is mommy and the sun is daddy, and Saturn are the should and ought to relatives, and Pluto is the controlling matriarch in the family. And I thought, gee, I can see people's programming in their chart. And what I came to see and study at a particular spiritual school, which is no longer in existence, that we are all run by our programming, and that if we could get rid of our programming, we could be the gods, the goddesses, the divinity that lives inside of us. And so I began looking at it and studying it, and I teach classes in it now. I wrote a book called Move Into the Magic, and it takes everybody step by step through the technique I use. Very, very simple, very, very simple. And I've upgraded because what I saw was Move Into the Magic was the first step. My current classes that I teach are called Take Back Your Life. Getting a little stronger rather than the sweet, move into the magic. The magic is where you go when you're in the 0 point field, where you are one with spirit, where you know that you are spirit. And it is ecstasy, it's bliss, it's peace, it's joy. And when you're in the magic, you're not living your story. The problem is that our buttons here on planet Earth get punched. And we have to go back and look at the ego-based programming. And my whole thing is, let's move through it fast. Let's not spend time, analyzing it for years. And Take Back Your Life is a fast way of freeing yourself from the not good enough message, which began with the bad message. And there are two things, Charlene, that are my hot buttons that I teach. Number one is the bad message. Everybody's got it. And if you look at the politicians, you can see that they're overcompensating. The rest of us just do our best, and we are compensating too. The other thing that I've discovered, which I haven't seen anywhere, and I'm sharing now with you guys, is the first sexual imprinting. This is the most crippling thing that is done to not everybody, but when it is done to somebody, they are frozen in time at that point, and they are emotionally stunted at that point, to say nothing of living out a sexual orientation, a sexual programming that is not their own. And when I saw that, my response was, holy cow. Only I didn't say cow. It was amazing. And so that's what I've been sharing. It's to free our planet. It's to empower people. I empower people to empower themselves.
There must be actually something in the air about the when you talk about sexual programming, because I know in the last few weeks there have been all these ads about saying no, taking back your life, talking about not real women, specifically for women, not accepting abuse, not accepting bad behavior, and calling it, well, boys will be boys. There's a lot on it, and as I said, it must be in the. I don't know what that is astrologically either, because I just see it everywhere. So, why do you think do you think it's time for a healing for this? Do you think that somehow the rest of the planet kind of caught on and said, well, maybe we should start here, and they'll all come looking for you? What's going on, Maxine?
Well, I'm here in Marietta. I'll tell you what came to me, Charlene, as you were saying that. I discovered this about 2 years ago, and it blew me out of the frame. It literally blew me out of the frame, and I was going to write a book on it. And I thought, no, I need to do workshops on it. I need to talk to women. But I'll tell you when I think a lot of stuff kicked in, and it starts at the top. January 20th, it kicked in. When was Trump inaugurated? On the 19th or the 20th? The day after that was the Women's March, which took place worldwide. And that was a take back your life, take back your body, take back you. and all I could think of was Helen Reddy's fabulous song, I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar, in numbers too big to ignore, and I know too much to go back and pretend. And so I think that absolutely kick-started it publicly all over the world with men, women, generations of women in the same family, children, walking around with their pink pussy hats, just declaring, I will not go down without a fight, or more specifically, hear me roar, I'm here and I'm not going away. I think it surfaced big time. Interestingly enough, at the very same time that all of this is going on, Bill Cosby's trial is now going on. It is eclipsed by the Trump-Comey situation, Trump-Comey-Putin situation. As
Kushner.
Yes, absolutely. And that was the other thing that the chart showed. The fourth house of home and family is triggered with this full moon on Friday, and Jared is the one he's closest to. And my sense is that if anything came to light that was negative, proven true, negative about Jared, about his family, it would be devastating to Trump. He would respond violently, just as his anger would. The anger we've heard about would really show itself. And I understand, because his family means so much to him, but that's the South Node moon thing. So that absolutely could surface.
Well, he'd be protecting his daughter, and
Well, yeah. Yeah, and that's a very interesting relationship too.
Is that a thing? What is that?
Well, again, we're talking about sex and whether you act on it or not. And I think that the Billy Bush bus, that surfaced. A lot of people didn't care about it. They cared about Trump.
They blew it off. Yeah,
they blew it off. A lot of people did care about it. I mean, our country is polarized right now, and I'd love to see it come together in a balance, but in a beautiful balance. However, that may be very idealistic. And right now we're in the middle of this upheaval where the truth is hopefully going to surface, at least start to surface. I don't think there's a whole lot that Comey can say, although he is a private citizen now. So we're all waiting to see what happens. So in answer to your original question, I really think that those of us who were so women's libbers in the 60s got that flame rekindled during the Women's March. And millions and millions and millions of women all over the world marched. And brava to all of us.
Yeah, I met quite a few women that had marched in the 60s, and they were really happy to be out there again.
It punched my button big time.
Yeah.
It really, really did. And as a woman, I'm looking at the committees, the cabinet positions that are now in effect, and I'm thinking, where are the women? Where are the women? But that's just, one woman's opinion.
Right. So, in following this path, what you've noticed again about the sexuality imprinting, that how key that is. So then, what do you say when people get screwed up, like with molestation and rape, and what does that really do to their psyche and their programming?
Oh my word! It is. Well, first of all, the way I look at things, and this is going to sound very matter of fact, if it's in your life, you want it. If it's not in your life, you don't. And so you would say, well, why do you think a woman would want to be raped? Why would she do that? There's no blame involved. It's a movie. It's a movie. And when you go to the movies, some people like cartoons, some people like animation, some people like adventure, some people like romantic comedies. And that's the way I look at what I've created and what my friends create. There are reasons that we create the things we do, and I honestly believe that it's so that we will ultimately awaken to the truth of who we are, which is that we are the all in all. We are one. We are love itself. And if you get to the bottom of it, there's nothing wrong with us. We attract these situations to us because we believe that we're not good enough. And that's what I deal with in Take Back Your Life.
Mm-hmm. So what do you say to someone that it's happened to them as a child?
As a child, absolutely. For many people, that's exactly when it happened. We go back, we look at it, we release the inner child within who was raped. Each case is different, but I work one-on-one with people. And in fact, I just did a session with a beautiful young 19-year-old girl and her father. I had, remember, the sexual imprinting is not necessarily rape. It's not necessarily overt, but when it's the overpowering and controlling of the woman. And if the people involved, the perpetrator or perpetrators involved, get a sexual thrill from it, the child picks up on that. And that's the problem. They can't identify it as a rape, but they know that something's wrong in their sexual arena, and that's why. So I work with each person separately to identify that, and we can let that go. For some people, it takes several attempts, of course. It is forgiveness of self. It is forgiveness of the perpetrator. But more importantly, it's why did I create it? Well, having been through it myself, now I'm able to share it with the world and free women. So for that alone, I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for everything I created in my life. And in working with my clients, I've been able to heal myself. You know, when you give an astrology reading, you get a reading because you attract people to you who are going through what you're going through. So when I give a healing, I get a healing. Doctors do this all the time, chiropractors, energy healers, because we're dealing with sheer energy. When I work with a client to take back their life, I learn more about myself as well. And the reason it's so easy for me to work with them is because I've been through it myself. The reasons are universally true. The manifestations are all different.
Right. Wow, that's deep. Very deep. Okay, so where can people find your books, Maxine?
Oh, online, on Amazon. Okay. I've taken all my astrology books. Well, let's see. I think you can get my book, Now That I've Cast It, What Do I Do With It, on Amazon. You can get it from the American Federation of Astrologers as well. I've taken all 5 of my astrology books and I've compiled them into one mother lode, and it's called the Stargazer's Mother Lode, and it's available only on my website. I literally print it up at Office Depot and send it to you. We're talking about a high-class operation here. I bring my thumb drive in, and they make copies. And it's all 5 books that I've written. My book, Move Into the Magic, is available on Amazon. And I have another book I've written that has nothing at all to do with astrology. It's my science nonfiction book, and it's called the Earthbound Trilogy. And it's a story about, it starts off with a walk-in, and it's a story of actually 2 or 3 walk-ins, and how they hook up with each other. It's not fine literature, it's not great literature, but it is my credo. It is my experience, and it's about lifting the world. It's only on Kindle. You can only get it on Kindle. If I print it up, it gets too expensive. So those are my books. I really love working one-on-one with people. To me, at this point in my life, it's about giving back. And I can't give it back enough. My full moon ceremonies are free. They last an hour. And if you're not in Atlanta, you can just tune in wherever you are, so to speak, energetically. And you'll feel the energy because we put it out to everybody. We are one. And what affects one of us affects all of us.
Wow. Incredible stuff here, Maxine. I don't know what we're going to do with you. You have like so much in you because you see how I see how you've evolved even more, going into a deeper level now with the soul healing, basically.
Yeah.
So you actually, I saw that you actually offer sessions in finding out what your true soul purpose is here on the planet.
Oh, your mission. Oh, I love doing that. Just before we went on the air, I did two things. I did a star matrix healing session with someone, and prior to that, I did a life mission with someone. Charlene, I know that you know this. Truth is simple. It's not complicated. It's not only for the hierarchy. It is simple. It's based on love. Love is the greatest antidote on the planet. When I'm happy, I'm healthy. When I'm unhappy, I'm unhealthy. My stomach hurts. My head hurts. When I feel loved, I walk on air. So we're here to understand who we are. The mission, our life's mission, is just fabulous. I mean, I wrote about it in the second half of my book, Move Into the Magic. I ask two questions, just two questions, and I can tell you what I can help you tell me what your life's mission is, because what I do is I ask the questions and then I shut up, and I let the person use their own verbiage. And it has to be the right words. Well, they always give me the right words. And I play it back to them and say, is this your mission? And they go, oh, I hope so. I'd love it to be. Well, if you'd love it to be, it's what it is, because you're already doing it. Or those who are really in tune say, yes, it is. And they quit breathing for a second. When I verbalize it, they quit breathing. And in person, they quit blinking, because they're so thunderstruck. A really sensitive person will stop breathing. They resonate to the sound of the words. I love doing that, and I do it with people all over the world because I can do it online. I do everything online, and I love seeing the faces of the people I work with. If I had all the money in the world, I would still do this. I'd probably do it free of charge. Although I found out, Charlene, that there is a universal law that says there has to be a give and take.
Yes.
You have to allow the other person to thank you by giving you something. And the something that we use is money, because that pays the bills. But at a certain point in your life, what I've found, I can only speak for myself, there is the desire to give what you know to anybody who is interested in learning it. And I do price things affordably so that everybody can take advantage of it. I have my full reading. If you go to my website, I've got a full reading. And that takes more than an hour. I record it. You get FaceTime with me. We talk. And I usually do a lot of extra things that whatever the person needs. But a lot of people, a couple of years ago when the economy tanked, they needed a reading more than ever and could afford it less than ever. So I put it out there to the multiverse and said, okay, how can I give people a reading at a price they can afford without eliminating any information? And I came up with a bare bones reading.
So what was this bare bones reading like? What is that about?
Well, it's the same exact information I give in the full reading. It's just me talking into a video camera. Um, it gives, in other words, I don't leave anything out. But the person at the other end doesn't get FaceTime with me. They can't come over to my house. The other reading lasts about an hour, maybe more, and we solve problems. With the bare bones reading, you get the information. I leave nothing out. It's just that there's not a give and take. And this is where it makes it affordable. Now, I'll tell you what often happens after I give a reading, people feel very close to me. And I feel close to them. I mean, I feel like everybody I read becomes one of my girlfriends, you know. And when people used to come to my house, I couldn't get rid of them. They wanted to stay and visit and talk because I'm an empath. So when I read the chart, I become the person. There is no judgment. It is all right. You know, my mantra, you're fabulous, deal with it. So when you're with somebody who totally gets you and doesn't judge you and accepts you exactly as you are, there is a terrific bonding that goes on. And it's tiring to give a reading very often, especially if it goes on for more than an hour. And yet, you know, I don't want to hurt the person's feelings, but I need to, you know, get a little caffeine in me and fill back up. And so I've found over the years that people, you know,
take advantage.
Well, they don't mean to. They don't mean to. It's just that they don't want to leave. I've been with people who I've just fallen in love with because they seem to be so loving and kind. And, you know, I have to remind myself, well, maybe they need to make a pit stop. Why don't you shut up and leave, Max? But, you know.
Like, don't you have to go home now?
You know, I mean, I'm actually saying to myself, if I'm with somebody who's read me and I feel really good about them, I have to remind myself, go, leave. Let the person go back to their life. And it's a true compliment. I take it as a compliment when people love their readings and don't want to leave. But so now I do them on video. Which is helpful. And then the bare bones reading is even better from the standpoint of I get in, I get out, and I feel very good knowing I've given the person all the information I possibly have for them. And that's very rewarding. Very rewarding.
Beautiful. So again, we have to bring this in so people remember, how can we get a reading from you?
Oh, MaxineTaylor.com. Go to my website. I have a fabulous webmaster, and he has done a really user-friendly chart. And when you go to the website, you just go to my services page, and I've got astrology services, spiritual services, I forget what else. And you can order right there on my website. You hit the button to order. It takes you to PayPal. PayPal is very happy to take your money, whether or not you have an account with them. They don't care. You know, they'll take your credit card number. And as soon as I hear from PayPal, I call you or email you and set up a time for our reading. And there are a lot of readings I give. You know, you've got a choice. The two most popular are the birth chart and the forecast for the coming year. Obviously, I mean, if you've never had your birth chart done, you want to start there. I have clients I've read for 40, 45 years. We do forecasts every year. And
Solar return charts.
solar return chart, that's a very interesting chart.
Yeah.
The solar return chart is a snapshot of the heavens, so to speak, at the exact minute that the sun returns to its natal place in your chart, which you might expect to be on your birthday. But
It's not always. Yeah.
right. It can be up to 2 days before your birthday or 2 days after your birthday. And I was explaining that to my chiropractor, and I said, haven't you had birthdays where you wind up celebrating the day before your birthday, and you have such a great time, and you think, wow, tomorrow's really going to be great, and tomorrow is a total dud because you've already used up the energy on your solar return. So this year, believe it or not, well, of course you believe it, Charlene, my best friend and I celebrated my birthday on my solar return time, the day before my birthday. And had a wonderful time.
We saw pictures.
Oh, that's right. That's right, you did. You did. So a lot of people like their solar return chart. I like the regular forecast more because I can give more information for the whole year.
So then now, Maxine, you talked a little bit, and we're just prepping people for what you'd say we call our woo-woo hour. And in our woo-woo hour, we talk about everything, and we go much deeper. So you talked about being a walk-in, along with being an empath, walk-in. So can you tell people what a walk-in is?
Yeah, but I didn't say I was, but I will now.
Oh, okay. You mentioned it.
I kind of danced around it. Okay. There's a lot of information on walk-ins on the internet. It's essentially a soul exchange. When one person has had it up to their eyeballs with this planet and their life, and they're upset and all this kind of stuff, it's a contract that is made prior to birth. And so the person who's here in physical form leaves. And the exchange is made with a walk-in spirit, so that the body doesn't die. It's just it's like in the movie Ghost, that kind of thing. And there are different types of walk-ins. Some are conscious, some are unconscious. And in my book, the Earthbound Trilogy, I've described the different types, and they're actual stories. They're true stories. And this is why I said it's science nonfiction.
Nice. So, I look forward to hearing more about that in our woo-woo hour, because it's very interesting, your character, just because of how much you've done. You actually have done so much in this lifetime, and it's a short lifetime.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we should be in the woo-woo hour momentarily, correct?
Yeah. So people will get to hear more about that. That should be really cool. Wow. So anything else when you look at this beautiful planet? Some days it's really beautiful. What are your thoughts? Have you done, because I know you've done charts on the United States. Are we doomed? You've done charts on the planet. What's going on here? So what's your outlook for us from here on in?
Well, I'm right now with the situation in our world as it is primarily in the United States where I live. I'm actually taking it one step at a time, but because every day there's just another unbelievable unbelievable situation. And I feel like I had said this back a couple of years ago with the Uranus-Pluto square that was going on for so many years, that before we can create the kind of planet that we want, we've got to get rid of what isn't working. There's usually an upheaval. And I do believe that that's what each political party believes they're giving us. Um, and so I feel like what we're going through now is what we invited. Remember, if it's in our lives, we want it. If we don't, if it's not in our lives, we don't. So if we're alive at this time, we chose to be here at this time to help in the evolution of the planet. Some people don't think of it that way. Some of it simply think in terms of getting a job. But those of us who are light workers know that there has to be an upheaval in third dimensional reality to get rid of what isn't working so that we can come together lovingly and create the world that we want. What's going on now is the news cycles are so happening so quickly. I can't even look forward in 2018. 2017 is where it's at, and 2017 has been the year of Trump. He's in the news all the time. All the time. I mean, he's trumping, no pun intended, every other event. And so he gets involved in commenting on the event, tweeting on the
Twittering,
event.
yeah.
Yeah, and so we are, now I'm watching less news than I did before because it's no longer a shock. It's no longer a surprise. And I want to be inspired. When I watch the ABC evening news, there's always David Muir does this beautiful piece at the end on the inspirational person of the week, and maybe I'm an idealist, but I love puppy dogs and kittens and rainbows, and I'm not blind. I see reality, but I really do feel good when there's a beautiful story of somebody helping another person. And that's what I really need a lot of. Or if I'm on Facebook and somebody's posted a video of the beach, of the tide coming in, I am there. It's all right. So I really haven't looked ahead at 2018 and 19 because we are focused on the president this year. What he does is affecting not just the United States, but everybody else. And everybody's got an opinion about him. And he's in the news. And that's what he wants. In his birth chart, he has the Sun, Uranus, and the North Node in the 10th house. This makes for a rebel, a public rebel. And being in the limelight is his greatest ability. And he's capitalizing on it. And we are all part of it. So you'll have to have me as a guest again in 2018 or 19. Because right now I'm exhausted with what's going on.
Well, I guess it's that time for all of us, because this is where I would see that your work would be crucial at this time. Just because once people understand what their sole purpose is here on this planet, then things can be a little bit different, because once you know you, then you would choose differently. Oh,
well, once you know your mission, you are instantly propelled into another dimension. It's so uplifting, so absolutely uplifting. I was thinking about you and what you are doing for this planet. And you know how I had said to you when you invited me, I guess somebody invited me to come on your show, and I said I'd like to speak to a human being before I commit to that. Hoping I would hear from you, of course, and I didn't know why. But when we spoke, I knew why, because of the connection we made. What you do by bringing guests on the show that you would like to meet, you absolutely lift our planet. You do so much, and your voice is so mellifluous. It's so gentle. So I think of that. I think of people who are doing everything they know how to do in their own arena to lift our planet, and you're one of them.
Thank you. And so are you.
Thank you.
Because you've done your share of interviewing, too. So this is the part that we didn't talk about. But you've done different shows with different guests, including David Wilcock, I believe, was one of your guests years ago.
Oh my goodness, this is a really great story. I've had a radio show. I forget everything I've got, all the plates I've got, and all the balls I'm keeping in the air. I had a radio show, I still do, on the Co-Creator Radio Network, and it was a 30-minute forecast every week for an astrological show. And I would, give the reading. I'd read it into I'd record it on a CD recorder and send it snail mail to my producer. I figured out how to do it over the internet. And that got really old because it was just me talking into a recording device. And I was contacted by David Wilcock's publisher, who said, David has a new book out. Would you be interested in interviewing him? Well, I knew who David was. And it took me maybe 3 seconds to totally shift gears, change the format of my show, and get on the phone and call her and say, can you send me a copy of the book? How soon can we do the interview? And so he was my first guest. I interviewed him subsequently. The boy is busy. It's hard to get him back on the air. But my own evolution, it shows up in my guests.
Yeah.
And now what I see is the people I'm interviewing, very, very different. They're truly light workers. They're truly contributing to the planet. At the beginning, I interviewed people who seemed very interesting, and some of them were. They spoke to different segments of my audience, and I have thoroughly enjoyed that. Now what I love to do are the videos on YouTube, because we're visual learners. And so I've got my show down to about 25 minutes. And in 25 minutes, we cover it and then say goodbye. Now, I got to say, the video I did this past week on will Trump be impeached, which I explain is not necessarily impeached, will he leave office? Within 24 hours, less than 24 hours, I had 4,668 views. And that's a bunch. So I knew it was a timely topic. I knew I had to put it out there. And I'm the one who does. When I do the chart of somebody who's well known, even if it's a solar chart, I feel it. And some of them are not fun to feel. Let's just put it that way. They're dark, and their energy is dark.
Oh, we'll talk more about that on the Woo Hour. Wow. Maxine, I love you. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today. And, I can't wait to hear what you have to talk about in the Woo Hour. I'm excited.
I can't wait to hear what you're going to ask me.
It was one of those on that note. But wonderful. So thank you again, our wonderful guest, Maxine Taylor. And again, you can find all her information on MaxineTaylor.com, and also see some of her YouTube videos on Maxine Taylor Astrologer YouTube channel. And it was a pleasure having you on with us today.
Thank you, darling. The pleasure was all mine.
Great, thank you. So you've been listening to Boundless Spirit Radio with Charlene Springer and a wonderful guest, Maxine Taylor. And we'll see you next time. And don't forget, tune in to the Woo Hour.